Oh, completely different. Here's how I'm feeling about the Victrix Pro FS arcade stick right now. I love... Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. As you know, I have recently received the Victrix Pro FS arcade stick, and I have unboxed it, and I have been testing it for the past week on stream, playing games with it, testing out the stick, testing out the form factor. I even brought it to a local in Tokyo last week, and I've tested out, how easy is it to carry it around, what am I doing with it, how am I holding it when I'm not playing games. I pretty much like every single aspect of it. I like the fact that the stick is removable. I like the fact that it feels nice. There's something about the clickiness of this which is making combos work really well for me. I love the flashing lights. I love that you can change the colors up here. I love that you can have it react. I didn't even know that until I did a stream recently. I was just streaming and I was testing out all the new features. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. Anyway, there was exciting stuff happening all the time. I love that this cable is removable. I love that you've got these shoulder straps, which I haven't even used yet. I just like the potential that I could use them. I like that you have easy access to the insides. You can open it anytime you want. You can modify it. You can fix it. You can take things out and put things back in. When you're not using it, you can put the stick in here, take it out when you need to use it. But most of all, my favorite feature of this stick is definitely this. Now that is the best click of all time. While I have been using this stick over the past week, there has been one thing that has been slightly bugging me, and it's the sound of these buttons. Now, it doesn't sound maybe too bad through the camera, but it's actually quite loud. And not only is it quite loud, but it's quite hard. It's actually quite a hard stop when you press the buttons. I was feeling a bit of fatigue in my fingers. Why did I do this with my fingers? I was feeling a bit of fatigue with my fingers after playing for long sessions. I was like, you know what? It's starting to hurt a bit, and I didn't feel like I was getting the same fatigue when I would play on something like the Razer Pantera. It's quite a bit cheaper than the Victrix Pro, and yet I still prefer the feel of the buttons on here and the sound of the buttons on here. Sounds quieter, hurts less. But with the Victrix Pro, because I like so many other things, so many other aspects of this stick, I really want this stick to work out for me because it's just so nice to hold. When you go to a tournament, it's just so huggable. There's something really sleek and performance about it that I really like. Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, it can also do this. Yeah. So I really want to love every aspect of the Victrix Pro. Unfortunately, the thing that's bugging me is a moddable aspect. I can actually take these buttons out, and for that reason, I've gone shopping to Akihabara. I went to a little parts shop. It's called like Sengoku. I've got these buttons here. Hopefully you can see. Now what you're looking at here look like absolutely normal Sanwa buttons. But inside these Sanwa buttons, there's a little foam pad, which makes these quite a lot quieter. This is actually the original button that was in my Victrix when it first arrived. It sounds like this. And this is the silent one. So it may not sound too different right now, but there is shock absorption. And the thing about this stick, which I'm not sure if the engineers were aware of, sorry, the studio's falling apart. I'm not sure the engineers were really aware of this, but because of the solid construction of this stick, it means that it has a lot more high frequency content in it. So if you put an impulse into this stick, like this, I'm not sure if it's picking up in the microphone, but I can hear the frequencies of the resonant frequency of this device. It's the same thing when you get a glass. Actually, I'll find a glass and show you. Now, hopefully I'm not going to break this glass. With things like a wine glass, you may have seen videos where opera singers can actually sing high enough that they actually shatter the glass. But what they're actually doing is they're not singing really, really high. They're just singing the exact pitch that is the resonant frequency of this wine glass. That is the frequency at which this glass wants to vibrate at by putting a single impulse into it. And when you put an impulse into an arcade stick as solid as this one, it really does ring. I can hear it, it's going. Now, I may sound like a madman to you. I like to be very thorough when I do these reviews. The point is, by simply pressing these buttons, my fingers were starting to hurt and I was hearing a ringing noise. And I thought, since the hard construction has removed some of the shock absorption that you would normally expect from a cheaper plasticky arcade stick, we can actually try and put that shock absorption back in by using these Sanwa silent buttons. So today we're going to be modifying the Victrix Pro FS arcade stick with Sanwa silent buttons. Now before we begin, I'll give you a quick test of the sound of these buttons. I'll give you some quiet taps as well. So you can see it's only when you tap them quite hard that you get this sound. But I do press the buttons quite loudly, and I think a lot of people will press the buttons quite loudly. Here's if you press them really loudly. And here's if you double tap them. Now for comparison, I'll just grab the Hori RAP, which is also quite a loud stick, to be quite honest. Actually, a lot of the reason I don't use the Hori RAP is because this lever is quite loud. Here are the buttons. And this also actually has quite a loud ringing sound to it. But it doesn't ring quite as much because the construction is not made of metal. Well, there's metal on it. Well, it's not all over the bottom, essentially. It doesn't have a high resonant frequency. It's quite a low resonant frequency. Anyway, the point is, quietly, loudly, and double tapping. It's also quite loud, to be quite honest. This stick is actually quite loud. And last but not least, I'll just grab you the Razer Pantera, which is, I think, probably the best performer in terms of comfort and sound. It's actually quite a lot quieter. If I do it really loudly, it really makes no difference how hard I push it. It really does not get that much louder. And the stick, of course, Sanwa, ultra quiet. So let's go back to the Victrix and let's open it up. First, I'm going to take the cable out. And in order to open up this stick, we flip it over to the back and we've actually got, well, actually, I forgot I can take this off. That's going to make this mod easier. Let's go ahead and open up the stick. We're going to pull on this here, open it up, and it's super easy access to here. Now, the only thing is that because the cable management is really, really clean on this stick, this might actually make this may actually take a bit longer because we have to pull on these. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave 3 original buttons in, and I'm going to change 3 buttons out. Ooh! You pull on this lever and oh wow, that comes off really nicely. And that's gonna give us way more room to tug at these. Wow, I love this quick release mechanism. That's brilliant. All right, got them out. And now the second most stressful part, clicking on these buttons here until they actually fall out the bottom. All over the bottom. In order to do so, push on these tabs until they click in but not break. That's entirely possible that I've broken it. 1 button. Alright, so we've got 1 button out, and as you can see, there is now a hole in the stick. As you can see, right here where the clasp goes down, you can see there's a little bit of foam at the bottom. That's what's padding this button from the initial impact and making it not go plastic onto plastic and give us the full impulse. What really makes me nervous about these mods is when you put a button in, it goes past the tab and it clicks into place, and so it only closes in, it only pushes in as far as necessary. But if you go even 0.01 millimeters too far, this tab will break off because they're really just not that strong. But fortunately, it looks like I've managed to get this button out safely without breaking it. That's what it looks like on the front after you've taken the buttons out. And now what we're gonna do is take these Sanwa silent buttons. I got 2 different colors, but they're exactly the same button. I'm going to take these Sanwa silent buttons and we're going to put them in. I think a combination of the padding in here and the rigidity of this case is gonna make them just feel the same as normal Sanwa buttons. So let's find out. That's 1. Okay. If I just give this a preliminary close, you can see on the front, I now have the original black buttons. And let's test the new Sanwa silent buttons. Whoa, that's really different in sound. Let's try that again. I really can't wait to screw these in back into the bottom and then test them actually in game. Enjoy that satisfying. Oh. Alright, I've now booted up the PlayStation. Let's test how the buttons sound. This is the original Victrix buttons. Well, the original Sanwa buttons that came with the Victrix. Quite loud, quite piercing, and quite resonant at certain frequencies. Here are the Sanwa silents. Whoa! Completely different. Now it does feel different as well. I'm going to put it down on my lap and we're going to actually try it in real world to see whether it feels different. Now let's go ahead and try a few buttons. It does feel different. If they could come up with a thinner pad than this, like this is too much. You don't have the satisfying thunk of the plastic on the Sunwa. Let me just compare it to the Razer Pantera since I've got one here. There are a couple things that are different. When you use the Sanwa Silent, it does feel like there's less travel to the button, like it's not going down quite as far. So it feels like it's stopping a little earlier. So in a way, it's like a low-profile Hori, Kuro, or Hayabusa button, I guess. It doesn't feel quite as satisfying. It is quiet though. It is much, much quieter. I can play with it. I can play with it. It's just not quite the same, is it? One thing that I do want to change is this color. I need this to be red, so I can match the new buttons. Here we go, that's much better. In my ideal scenario, for like a second version, for a second coming of the Victrix Pro FS, I would quite like to see some dampening going on beneath the buttons, and I think that could actually be quite easily accomplished. I think if they bore out the hole a little bit wider than before, it could just be soft plastic, not rubber, but it could be soft plastic to go between the button and the surface of this body, because this body, basically, this sounds perfect now. Obviously, it's not completely silent, so I like the thunk. I like hearing the quiet thunk. And I should also point out that I did reach out to some pro players on Twitter and ask them how they felt about the buttons that they've tested on the Victrix. And I think it's varying opinions. Some people seem to like the satisfying clunk of the buttons. Others do find that it's worth changing the buttons and have gone for, like, there's a Taiwanese maker called Gamer Finger. They're making quiet buttons as well, so I do kind of want to test those as well. The other thing about these buttons is that there is in fact going to be a Generation 2 of the Sanwa Silent. Now, I've seen that Jason's done a video of it, but I don't have access to the second generation yet. But the first generation buttons are definitely too gummy, and it changes the travel. You actually press the button not as far down as you would. Yeah, you can see it stops early. It changes the feel of the buttons, and I would much prefer to just play with stock Sanwa buttons. The thing is, I have a feeling it's gonna get worse when I put my headphones on. It feels okay, like, with my headphones off, I can get used to this feel of the Sanwa buttons, and I like it enough that I would use it over the stock Sanwa buttons. But when I put my headphones on, because that feels nice and satisfying and decisive, I know that I've pressed the button, but when I press it on these, okay, it's okay. No, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. I can get used to it. I think maybe because I've just plugged them in, I think it's too early to tell. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna test it maybe on a stream in the future. And actually, in answer to anyone who's wondering, why don't you just always play with headphones? First of all, the hardness was hurting my fingers, so definitely the Sanwa Silent buttons do help alleviate that stress finger fatigue issue. The sound issue is more that I just have neighbors in Japan, and it's a really quiet country, and I don't want to bug other people nearby. And if you have a family, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's how I'm feeling about the Victrix Pro FS arcade stick right now. I love everything about it. I like the stick, I like the lights, I like the layout, I like the thoughtfulness, I like the design, I like the fact that, wait, why are my sound alerts going on? I like that you can change this to reactive mode and you can have flashing lights come on when you do stuff like that. I like the easy accessibility of this. I like the satisfying clunk. I like the ease of which I was able to modify the buttons, and the fact that, you know, it's just little features like being able to take this off the PCB really conveniently and easily. That's stuff that really matters. The fact that that door like falls down nice and slowly. So satisfying. It's the stick that I really want to love. This is the ongoing story with me in pretty much every product I've ever reviewed. So I've always wanted this toy or that toy. When I was a kid, it was always stuff like Exo Squad toys. I was like, I really want this toy because it's got flexible wings. They always want the one killer feature, but then when you buy it for the one killer feature, there's always one small issue that's bugging me. It's just like the paint job's not quite right, or the missiles don't actually click off like I thought they would, or they don't actually plug into place, or it doesn't transform and spin and rotate in exactly the right place that it does from the Transformers cartoon, stuff like that. And I would say that the Victrix Pro FS arcade stick is the stick that I really want to love, because I like everything, literally everything about it, except for these buttons. And fortunately, the buttons are something that you can change. So I'm very looking forward to trying out Sun Was Silent Generation 2. Generation 1 is doing a really good job so far, but I'm really looking forward to trying out Generation 2. Also, there are these gamer finger buttons, which I actually saw in a shop, and I pressed them a few times, and it does feel less gummy than these buttons, and at the same time, a little bit closer to the original Sanwa feel. For now, I'm going to put 6 of these Sanwa Silent buttons into this, and I'm going to play with them, and we're going to see how it goes. That's how much I want to love the stick. I'm willing to switch to these Sanwa Silent buttons so that I can make this my main stick. I would call this the new breed of premium sticks. It's a little bit like buying a car. When you decide that you're going to upgrade from your Toyota Corolla, you've decided, I'm done with reasonable cars. I'm going to now go and buy a performance sports car. This is what you end up with. You end up with the Victrix Pro FS. But it feels like what they've rolled out is the startup line of new performance sticks. Let's say the car that you're trying to buy is a Porsche, but you can't afford a Porsche right now, you get the Porsche Boxster. It's like the cheap version of a Porsche that doesn't actually have all the leather trimmings of an actual Porsche 911 or something. This is the Porsche Boxster. And I think that if they charge not $350, but $500, then they could give you the Porsche 911. And then I think in the future we'll have sticks which are made of like carbon fiber, which will be ultra light, they'll be slightly flexible so that the buttons don't hurt your fingers as much and they don't sound as loud. They'll have all of the extra trimmings, all the stuff that the base models have, plus more, and that will be the Porsche Cayenne. But what I think Victrix have put out so far is an incredibly premium experience that we haven't really had a taste of before. We've had really high quality toys, and I'd say things like the Razer Pantera. This is a supreme toy. You know, it's got gummy L3 buttons and R3 buttons that I'm not too keen on. The design on the back of, like the design on the cable release, like first of all, you can't replace the cable without replacing the entire stick, which defeats the whole purpose of having a removable cable. And even if you do have a removable cable, it juts out from the front, so if it bumps onto anything, you risk damaging it. So many things about the Razer Pantera that I wasn't too keen on, but it's an extremely high performance stick that does everything you need for $200. But the Victrix Pro FS is actually the stick that I want to love. I don't want to love the Pantera, it just is what it is. This stick is the one that I'm like, okay, well, if it means I have to change buttons so that I can use it, then so be it. Ideally, I wouldn't. Ideally, I would just use stock Sanwa buttons. I like the travel, I like the feel, not when it's on a rigid body like this, but normally on another stick like the Pantera. I love the sound, I love the feel, I like the travel, and on this stick you get the original Sanwa buttons, but they're louder than before and they hurt more than before. So for $350 you'll get the Porsche Boxster, and then for $500 you'll get the Porsche 911. And I think what I'm waiting for is the Porsche 911. I will probably make it my main stick anyway though. Even though it's louder, and even though it hurts a little more, I kind of want to use this stick more. And that's also because I brought it to a local Street Fighter gathering in Tokyo recently, and I tried it, and it was just the ease of use, carrying it around, the lights, the buttons, the feel, the convenience, the cable release, everything about it was just really, really nice. This isn't a complete review, just a halfway point since I'm still testing it and I realize that they're going to start selling them soon. Sales will start in like a couple days. I highly recommend that you try one first. You may find that these buttons don't hurt your fingers, and also they don't hurt your ears. Or maybe you play with headphones and so it's a complete non-issue. Personally, I recommend going to a local or a tournament and finding someone who has one and saying, do you mind if I, sorry, I don't know how to switch that off. Find someone who has one and see if you can test the buttons for at least 5, 10, 15 minutes. Don't just go over to them and go, okay, yeah, they feel normal to me. try it for 10 to 15 minutes and see if your fingers start to hurt and see how you feel about the sound. If they do start to hurt and you don't like the sound, you can get soundless silent buttons, and I've heard it on good authority from other players that the gamer finger buttons also feel really nice, but also have the reduced sound and impact that you need so that your fingers don't hurt and your ears don't hurt. Anyway, I'm going to put 3 more of these soundless silent buttons in here. I'm going to test it out for another week, and then if I'm still not super satisfied, I may try some new buttons as well. So I'm going to keep changing things up until I find the perfect setup for myself, because I really want to love this stick, because as you've seen in the videos and the streams, there's so much to love about it already. May as well go all the way and customize it until it is the perfect setup for me. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share links and all that great stuff, and I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video and or stream. How do I turn this off? Aha, there it is.